Hi, Finbar. Can you tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and what led you to where you are now?
Whoa, what? Well, that's a big one right out of the gate right
Yeah.
there. So a little bit about me. I'm an explorer. My life story is so many full of so many artifacts. It's like a treasure chest of all different bits that are all shining. So I started as a musician, got into building software, started inventing things, writing patents, got into technology, then I got into human capabilities, do lots of public speaking. Then I ran a data science company. So it's everything between an intersection between human capabilities, deep technology, and media and arts and entertainment. It's been sort of my life, basically. I don't know what you call that, but whatever that's called, that's what I am.
That's absolutely amazing. How did you go from a musician to working in tech, creating tech?
Well, it's really interesting. So when I was really young, I went to this Christian school, and I was a really curious kid, and probably like a lot of people that can relate to this, right? So I was always asking the questions. And I was asking stuff about the Bible, and I didn't know. I was like, how did this guy part the sea? And they were like, shut up, O'Hanlon. They thought I was being like insolent and I was being naughty, but I was just a curious kid. And so as I started to get through the schooling, I used to get in trouble all the time. And so I went deep into myself. I didn't really, I thought there was something wrong with me. But what I found was, I found this really amazing passion to challenge myself. And I never really got into sport. I never really got into anything where I was competing against someone else, but I loved competing against myself. And so I got into this, I found music, and music was the ultimate challenge whereby your whole life, you never learn it. It's always this evolving thing. And so I loved it. I could sit in my room for 8 hours a day and play and practice. And I got really, really good. And I started teaching, jazz fundamentals at like 18 at the conservatorium in Sydney. And I was touring in bands and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And what ended up happening was this curious mind of mine, it went from music and all the theory and technical stuff and putting things together in new and interesting ways into back in the day, what was happening was digital music and video was going from tape, reel to reel tape into digital, into computers. And I got really fascinated with that. So I started understanding how does the analog signal go into digital and learning about Fourier transform algorithms and coding. And all of a sudden, then I became this sort of guy who was right at the cutting edge of media as it was going into digital technology. Then I started working for Apple and Avid and all these companies. And then I was like, it was just this ride of curiosity that kept fueling this fire. And then, I started to learn to code. I never went to school. I just started picking it up because music is very much like an object-oriented language. And so you're composing things and putting things together. So it was sort of like I always look at the world through artifacts, being able to discover and find the pieces, breaking things down into pieces, and then reorganizing things in new ways. And so, as people, I learned that we've been taught to think in classifications of you're a musician or you're a coder, and so then we tend to have these biases about that's what I am. And so because I'll learn everything about that. I've always been of the mindset that everything is part of a puzzle. And how do I break these stereotypes of classification systems whereby you can connect the unconnected? And that's where the magic lies. So for me, it wasn't so much going from music to code to human capabilities to agentic commerce or whatever it is. They're just classifications for me for figuring out the puzzle of life.
Wow, that is amazing. That's such an amazing just progression as well. I think that more people should be curious. I think that curiosity is the key to life,
I
not
agree.
asking questions you can't move forward. I also am like a musician or I'm a DJ and I know exactly what you mean. And I'm also a coder, so I know exactly what you mean about how music and code are so similar. They really are. Yeah, I really, really see it. I think people carry on.
I was just going to say, there's something so magical about music when you study it. And it's something that I think is so relevant to life now. And I did a recent paper on it called The Language Alchemist, right? And so what it is that when you learn notes of music, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, whatever the notes are, that's the note. But there's context that sits around the note, which triggers emotion, which triggers all these sorts of biofeedback and resonance. And so what happens is once you start to learn the notes, then you play with someone else, and then there's a timing thing, and then sometimes it just turns into something magical, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes so when you're composing things and putting things together, it's a great metaphor for life of how, as people, we come together and we create an energetic response. And so, for me, about learning music is you learn the language within language and you start to actually understand the context of energy, emotions, spirit, timing, dynamics. And once you sort of tune into these like top order, call them language principles, you start to understand that AI and all these technologies can reproduce this core language. But once we understand the human language that wraps it around it, we can really transform all of this stuff around us into stuff that really connects with other people's. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but it might make sense to you. But it's to other people it might sound a bit airy fairy. It's like I say to people, if I said to you, Jenny and Leah, right, how are you guys going? And you said really good, and there was a 50-foot wall of flame behind you, I would read the response of the flame behind you with what you're saying, and I would respond differently to if you're sitting on a beach drinking a pina colada.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking at the context in what you're saying to then make an informed decision. And that's a really stupid way of explaining it, but there's there's a lot of stuff as people that we haven't tuned into yet, and that's what I'm excited for. I think that we're going into a place whereby we're going to start to explore this dimension of language and connection and energy.
What I love about what you've said is it's a way in for people because sometimes people don't think there's a way into tech for them or AI for them. It's just something so different. But knowing that you can go in through music, through language, through curiosity really opens the door. And I love this sort of higher order thinking as well. What scares people, I think, sometimes about AI is, oh, it just seems so human. But it's because we've been able to, in a way, sort of encode and understand what it means to communicate. And sometimes we do things so unconsciously that we don't realize the codes around us. And I think that's what you're really tuning into. So really, really beautiful. I love what you're saying.
100,000%. Like I do a lot of talks on stage public speaking, and I talk about what's called the human operating system.
Mm.
And I say, if everyone who's listening to this podcast recognizes that every single person is running a human operating system, and there's two parts of our human operating system, there's the conscious and the subconscious. And the conscious, think of our conscious like the user interface that we interface with the world. We make conscious decisions about things. But our subconscious is not only running our biological systems like our heartbeat and blood, it's also where our autonomous behaviors are stored. So if you put your foot on the brake pedal, you don't think about it. If you turn the steering wheel, you don't think about it. We learn these things and they become autonomous behaviors. The first thing to do in a world whereby you're in fear or you're being trapped or you're scared of having a growth mindset is to start to recognize what are the autonomous behaviors that have been programmed over the years that are stopping you from learning. And so just doing that without doing anything else is one of the most powerful things because it can get out of our way the programs that we've written in our mind that are stopping us evolving. So when we want to respond in 5 seconds or when we're getting emotional about something, there's typically an autonomous program that's driving that. And so once we can start to identify this, it's the art of unlearning. And people talk about it, but what's the applied way to do that? When I was you're living in New York, I learned this thing called media training. And it's basically when someone asks you a question, you guys probably know it, but for other people onto the podcast, when someone asks a question, you're going in to do an interview, you have a set of things that you want to talk about, and they're going to ask you questions you don't know what they're going to ask you. And your job is to have a 5-second pause and think about how you turn their question into what you want to talk about. That 5-second pause is a great way, a pattern interrupt for your autonomous behaviors to not respond. And so once you start applying this, you start to recognize, actually, where did that come from? And you start to apply this critical thinking. And it's a cascading effect from there. So I'm a big believer that for us to thrive in the future, for all of us to thrive in the future, the most important thing we need to do is to start to learn to unlearn and relearn how to put things together in a way. If we know look, if we've got skills, if I'm a BA or if I'm a coder or if I'm a ballet dancer or whatever it is, the competencies that I have, the things that that I'm really good at, if your job is going away, break it down into its parts, learn how to put it together in a way that's valuable for a new adaptive world, and you're going to have a lifelong career, no matter what it is. You just might not be called the classification of what you currently are, but all the things you've learned over your life are still going to be valuable, and you're not going to, it's not that my job's been taken by AI, the classification of what your job that you used to do. But if you pull that apart and put it together in a new way with a new outcome, which is just a reorganization, it's like a menu, changing the menu a little bit, then you've got a much greater chance of thriving in this world. At least that's my hypothesis, you know.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that the world isn't disappearing as we know it; it's just changing. And we need to keep up with it because it's AI isn't, as you said, taking people's jobs. AI isn't taking people's jobs at all. It's just changing what they look like.
Yeah, and hopefully making them better, augmenting them,
Yeah.
making them more exciting. I'm digressing slightly, but I want to know what's your favorite tune of all time, based on the fact that you're in this amazing studio. We've got guitars around you, and what's the tune that you couldn't live without, or that you just always go to, or that you love? Have you got one?
It's really hard because I don't know if you've ever listened to the music I create, the compositions I create. The music I like is very strange.
Mm.
I not really. I have lots of people that that really inspire me. Uh, yeah, it's really I wouldn't know.
So
Yeah,
that's
I
very
just
much
don't know.
like you've been talking this eclectic mix, and what you'd like to do is just bring a lot of things together.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
Yeah,
find your music and tune in, and then with
yeah.
you love.
You know, I love isochronic tones. I love I've done my business partner. So my business partner, one of my businesses in LA, my business partner, his dad was this famous musician Frank Zappa. So Ahmet Zappa and I have a business called Resonics, and we've got these patterns around taking a mix of modern music, slicing it into 48 slices, retuning each note frequency in a musical scale so it's more resonant with the human physiology, because tuning instruments was based on a mathematical equation where everyone plays in tune with each other. But you know what they forgot when they created that Pythagorean math, the 12-tone tempered tuning? They forgot the human in the equation. They thought about instruments all playing in tune. So we play around with that, and then we add these other psychoacoustic principles to try and drive human emotions, turning a mix of whatever you want in on the radio into a much more resonant mix to the human physiology. So we do all these weird things and these really interesting experiments, and yeah, it's just so cool.
Yeah,
That is so, so cool. That's so, so interesting.
and I love that thought about the resonance of the human being, the vibration, the music passes through us or hits us, and how that affects how we receive it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we know you're based in Australia, although you've talked about New York just then. I wonder, maybe as you go around the world, you see different responses to AI and technology. I mean, maybe thinking about Australia and UK, but you might want to touch on other places in the world you've been.
Yeah, look, I've lived in 5 countries. I was in the US for 10 years, exited my last company and came back to Australia to do that exit. And then I sort of just bathed in the peace and serenity that is my house right on the beach in Melbourne. And then, so look, my thought process on all this is that we're looking at AI all wrong. This is the way I look at it. And I'll try and explain this, is that I I believe we've been educated into a world that no longer exists. Okay. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to sense make AI through the mindset and the principles that we've been taught to live in a world that no longer exists. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand this thing and trying to put the frameworks around responsible AI and what technology is, and thinking about it as a technology. And so I look at AI a little bit differently. So I look at it as a part of a system that allows creativity to happen. And so let me explain this a bit, because I need to go back to explain it. Creativity, the definition that I use is the coming up with solutions to problems via reorganization of existing things. That sounds super technical. Let me explain it. If you're a painter, most people think painters are creative. A painter uses paintbrushes, paint, and a canvas and mixes them together, listing things, mixes them together to come up with a solution to a problem. And the solution might be, as a painter, I want to make money, or I want to get recognition, or I want to paint something that makes me feel something. As a musician, I have a guitar, a bass, listing things with strings, and I play notes. But it's the order that I put them together, the sequence of the existing things, is the art of creativity. Now, if you can understand that, I say, if AI is one of the existing things that we mix together, right, then we have this ability to create a new future. Now, AI, we're looking at it as a technology, and we're thinking about inference costs and how big the LLM is, and even small language models and this, and then agentic commerce with, MCP servers and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, we're talking about it through a technical lens. AI is the first technology that its programming language is the natural human language. So whatever we say, we're programming computers by what we say. So we should be actually empowered, not restrained. We don't have to learn code. We already speak code. And so what we need to do is to take this fear away and start experimenting. When we were young, when I was a kid, I would always try new things. I often at conferences, I'll say, hand up, put your hand up. Anyone in the room that's done something new that they've never done in their life before in the last week. Hardly anyone puts their hands up. I say, okay, hands up, anyone in the audience that's done something that they've never done in their life before in the last 4 weeks. You get about 3 people or 4 people put their hand up. Then they go, the last 6 months, and you get a little few more. My point is that we should be doing something that we've never done before every single day of our life. Even if it's buying a new low carb bread or trying but being conscious about the fact that we're doing that, because we get so bought into these biases of, I can't do that, or we're actually restricting ourselves from the ability to explore and experiment. And if 9 out of 10 experiments fail, it's the one that doesn't fail, which gives us, if we're doing it 100 times, we're getting 10 new successful experiments, but we're so afraid of failing because what if someone sees me, or we're so busy about the exterior of how we're seen rather than the interior of how we're growing. And so AI is this thing that can help us grow. We just got to take the fear away and start experimenting. But we don't do that. We get caught up in looking at LinkedIn at all this technical stuff. And, oh, did you hear of this thing about this machine now can do 100,000 lines of this, or it's going to replace? Okay, cool. That's one lens. Let's look through another lens. If you're in court, what's the defendant? You've now got to defend a different viewpoint. What's the other viewpoint? Practice, test yourself. These are simple cognitive games, but they build an adaptive mindset. And I think that's critical for all of us as we go into this future. We've got to stop thinking about AI as this thing that's really scary. It might be, but are we going to be better off if we're coming at it from an adaptive mindset and trying different things? I think the answer is yes.
I completely agree with you. I think that a lot of people have lost their childlike curiosity, and that is that just stops any sort of progress. People are worried, AI is bad, AI can do this, AI can do that, it's stealing our jobs. Why don't you look at it as a way of, well, AI can help me do my job better. AI can help me save time doing XYZ. And people wonder, how do people get into coding? And I was having a conversation with someone a couple of weeks ago, and they were like, how do you get into coding? And I showed them some of the code that I'd been working on for my own company. And they were like, wow, it is just words. It is just words. It's words that, are in our vocabulary. It's a language that people can learn. Because if you can learn French or Spanish, which people do every day on Duolingo, then you can definitely learn code. And the worst case scenario is that you don't pick it up. But the best case scenario is that you build something revolutionary.
Yeah, you're 100%. I think it's really fascinating when someone says AI is taking my job. And I go, okay, cool. And they just go quiet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so was that a statement or is it a question? And they go, oh, no, it's going to take my job. And I go, okay, cool. Well, it's not going to take my job. They go, what's your job? And you know what my answer is? I don't know. Because I keep changing my job.
Yeah.
I keep making things up because I keep meeting the market. I keep assessing where the market's at, and I keep adapting myself. So I'm always going to have a job. But if you want to stay, if you're happy with just taking that as that's where you're going to be, no problem. You stay there. I would love you to see what I can see, because if you look at it through a different lens, you will have a career for life. But if you want to be defeatist about it, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just telling you that I believe there's another way. And here's the worst thing about it. What have you got to lose by trying?
Exactly. I think it's having a growth mindset, a mutable mindset where you're constantly updating with the world, because the world is always going to keep changing. And it's AI today, it's artificial generalized intelligence in a few years. You have to be movable, you have to be changeable, because these things aren't going to wait with you.
Yeah, I think definitely the entrepreneurial mindset is what it's about. Whether you call it adaptive, this idea of let me create something, let me come up with new ideas, let me be resilient and adaptable to, and also, yeah, there are going to be some risks in what you try, but what's the worst that can happen?
Mhm.
Typically the worst that can happen is you learn something, and that's not a bad thing. So
That's exactly right. So, I've done a lot of coaching with boards, and it's quite interesting because I'm a very different character, but I've obviously served on a lot of boards and I understand governance, but I'm not a typical board member. But I often say to when I'd set up some innovation advisory boards, and I'd say to a board, okay, I've just got a couple of quick questions for you. Tell me the top 3 companies that might disrupt you in the next 90 days. And they can't answer me. I go, okay, cool. Tell me the top 3 companies that might disrupt you in the next year. And they can't answer me. And I go, okay. So my question is this: how are you making an informed decision on the future of this business when you're only looking in the rearview mirror at what your annual report's telling you or whatever your data's telling you? Now, that is important information. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But what is your lens on the future? Having Deloitte come in and tell you about macro trends is one thing, but it's not applied. It's not applying to your business. You need to be able to have you need to be able to look forward and backward, and you need to understand where the market's at. And so for directors to be able to make informed decisions about the future of anything, and that goes with every single person, for you to be able to make an informed decision about how you're going to survive and thrive in this new world, you need to be able to not just look backwards, you need to be able to look forwards, and you need to be able to, as you say, have that entrepreneurial spirit. You need to just take some of that fear away. If I play guitar and I learnt guitar, or if you're playing soccer or whatever sport you want to play, you don't go to practice, kick the ball, you kick it wrong and you go, that's it, I failed. There's so much risk involved. The words risk don't exist in soccer practice. The words risk don't exist in guitar practice. It's called practice. So, we're so caught up in the business world about risk. It's like, okay, risk through what lens? Change the word risk to learn, right? By you learning, you're now eliminating, you're de-risking, because now, as long as you're doing so in a way that you've put the sufficient guardrails in place where you're not being haphazard with it, it's a place to get you closer to your goal by doing it rather than not doing it and worrying about risk. It's just, again, it's a mindset thing.
It is a mindset thing. I'm going to move slightly onto some of the positives, I guess, or negatives that you've seen between Australia and other parts of the world. I've got the United Kingdom written down here, but what do you see as the mindset differences and the different ways of working? Because I think if you know the
That's
differences,
a great question.
know what's positive about other places, it can help you grow and it can help you learn as well.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I can only give you, obviously, my perspective. I'm not an expert in this. I only know from living in different countries. For me, the biggest problem with Australia and the Australian mindset is we're very comfortable here. We're very safe. We're in the middle of nowhere in the world. Everything's good. Yeah, we have problems, but realistically, compared to most countries, we don't really have problems. We've got great healthcare. Everything's good. So the problem with that is we're not very good at innovation. We don't think it's important. It's like, why? There's no need to innovate. The best innovations come from war, from famine, from the worst parts of life, whereby you have to innovate to survive. And when you're comfortable, it's a real challenge. And so, as we're moving into a world that's rapidly evolving, when you've got a country that's really heavily reliant on 1 or 2 or 3 industries, that it's quite dangerous. I spoke about this at the Global Innovation Summit in Dubai this year, where I talked about Australian innovation, and it's you're on a stage with people in Dubai who are spending, 5 to 6% of the national GDP on innovation, whereas Australia is number 30 in the world in innovation outputs, really poor. US has a really amazing culture of, okay, let's do this. Let's get behind it. Really good to get backing for startups, for investment. There's a really strong ecosystem over there for big thinking, big bold ideas. Australia's better for incremental ideas whereby everything can be measured and be de-risked. If I invest in this, we know that there's a very good chance it's going to succeed. America's a bit different. They're like, let's go for this. Look, I did a lot of work in Germany, and Germans are very much into innovation and technology. It's very a lot of guardrails around it, so it's pretty hard. Yeah, Spain again is like Australia. It's very relaxed. At least in my experience, France is very I don't know. They like to talk about the past a lot,
Yeah.
but again, that's just my experience.
Yeah, thank you. I know you run these Burning Mind workshops. Could you tell us a bit more about them, and maybe how you feel they might help with this sort of difference that we see between countries and their approach to AI?
Yeah, so Burning Mind was like a little brainchild of myself and two other guys initially. And so the other guys are event managers, and this is like a program I built. But it started off that I started learning a lot about the 13 human capabilities in the human capability standards, which for those that aren't familiar with it, if you look up the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report, you'll see that the top 10 skills for the future of work, there's basically no competencies there. So there's no job skills there. It's all the top skills are like creativity, adaptive mindset, lifelong learning, blah, blah, blah. And so when I went to school, no one taught this stuff. It was like, that's the stuff you don't teach. That's got no value. Now it's where all the value is. And so what I decided to do was to work on a workshop whereby all this academic research could be put into an applied methodology through play. And unlike the big challenge that you have in human capabilities is people already know how to do this stuff. So people think that to learn something means you've got to take in a lot of information. It's got to be hard. But that's not how human capabilities work. It's a bit like if I said, okay, Jenny and Leah, right, here, I'm going to give you some instructions on how to get really fit. This is what you have to do. Get some dumbbells, lift them up and down 10 times and do that 50 times. You'd go, that doesn't sound very complicated. So therefore it's not very good, because to be good, it's got to be measured on how complex it is. But it's not the information, it's the practice. That's where they're. So Burning Mind is a day for senior executives where they come together and I take them through a number of play puzzles and games where at the end of each one, I map them back to the human capabilities that are actually being developed through the games.
Wow.
Wow.
Sounds
Yeah,
fantastic.
that does sound fantastic. That sounds amazing. I guess it's, as we were talking about earlier, relearning new skills.
And tapping into them.
Yeah.
And as you said, practicing them.
Mhm.
Most important. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, I think we should go to your quick fire round.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this has been such a amazing podcast recording today.
I wish it could be longer.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you could do another one in the future sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, in one word, how does Australia's innovation culture different from the United Kingdom's?
I'll get myself in trouble. I think the UK's. I think I can't talk with. I'm not. You know what? I just don't know. I'll be honest with you. I think Australia is. If we look at the global innovation index, Australia. If it was a gold medal, if we were in the Olympics, Australia. Let me put it this way: if we were in the Olympics, Australia will be number 30 in the world, and probably the UK be in the top 10.
If artificial intelligence could give every workplace one upgrade, what should it be?
Help humans learn how to be more human.
I love that. Yeah. What is the biggest myth you've heard about artificial intelligence that you wish people would drop?
Biggest myth. I don't know if it's a myth, but yeah, again, you know what? I'm really bad at answering these. I'd be bad on a game show. I'm not sure if it's a myth, but I just think that the biggest thing that I think people should drop is they should just get rid of the fear.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, that is my quick fire round over. So don't worry, I'm not going to be putting you on the spot too much anymore. Thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like we've learned so much.
Thanks for listening to AI for Equity.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Stay curious, stay bold, and keep using AI to build a fairer future.